Good morning and welcome to another edition of 15 Minutes of Flame. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, people. I want to play for you a song that's dear to my heart. Hey, Robert Phoenix here. What's happening out there? Yesterday, goodbye to Glenn Campbell, huh? Wow. Glenn Campbell, just an amazing artist. Went through a period where he was a fucked up person, like a lot of us do, because that's what happens here. We get in touch with our shadow in sometimes a very explicit sort of fashion. But Glenn, to his credit and his family's credit, really bounced back. And if you have not seen the Netflix, it's a documentary, I think it made the rounds in movie theaters, if I'm not mistaken, but it's on Netflix. There's a documentary on Glenn called I'm Still Here, which is about his fight with dementia and Alzheimer's. And it's an incredibly touching documentary. And it's one that's just absolutely soaked with love. If you want to have a feel-good kind of moment today, or later today or tonight, watch I'm Still Here with Glenn Campbell. It's an amazing testament of love. One man's family, son, daughter, wife, the people that supported him from a business perspective. Glenn got the right people in place, and it is incredibly inspiring. It's an amazing movie. And he was missed a long time ago. I mean, let's be clear. I mean, Glenn has kind of left the building of his body a while ago, and I have no idea what condition he was in, but he was probably in not great condition. But this is what happens with, and which I really think is probably a form of mad cow. This is one of the things that I think is probably one of the big dirty secrets of our time, that Alzheimer's, dementia, what we might call maybe ALS. I'm not sure about ALS, but I think Alzheimer's, dementia, maybe versions of Parkinson's, I think they're probably mad cow. And the wasting takes place over a period of time versus the immediate brain gobble. Jacobs-Creutzfeldt syndrome, look it up. It's also known as Kuru disorder, which was discovered by, I think it's, Gajuzek. It's not Robert, because Robert was my teacher. Robert Gajuzek, a.k.a. Robin Gajuzek, was my teacher in college. It was his brother who won the Nobel Prize for discovering Kuru disease, and whose son is the producer of Stranger Things. But that's my take. Anyway, Glenn Campbell, God bless you. You gave us a lot. You had a very stormy, I tell you, man, cocaine in the 1980s ruined so many lives. So many lives. It was absolute. It was like a cocaine in the 80s. And even to the 70s to some extent, because that's really when it started to come in, was right around 77, 78, right around that time. And it really exploded in the 80s. It was like a bomb getting dropped off in every city in America. And the damage and the carnage that it had on people's lives and families was incalculable, absolutely incalculable. If you talk to somebody, I guarantee you they'll know someone, or they'll have had somebody in their family succumb to some form of issues in the 80s and even post 80s, 90s with cocaine-related drugs, whether it's freebase or crack. Oh boy! And I tell you what happens. This is the insidious part of drugs. So most people are walking around like giant wounds. to be honest with you. And we all do our best every single day to deal with our wounds. We cover them up. We supplicate them. We medicate them. Sometimes we confront them. It's kind of a lifelong battle or conflict in some ways. And I don't care even if you are a true believer in the gospel of Jesus Christ, you're still dealing with that wound. And the insertion of Jesus in one's life is to be able to give that person kind of the greatest sponsor of all time. Don't you think? I mean, that's really how it's like wired. So in those moments of crisis, in those moments where the wound is gaping and at its absolutely most vulnerable, that's when people will reach out and look for this connection to a higher power. Now, in AA, they've taken the sun out of the mix. They just like go straight to the higher power. And I have a few people that listen to my show that are very AA-centric. They really believe in AA. And I think AA has saved quite a few lives. It certainly helped a certain person very close to my family. But I don't know if I felt the effects of that. I don't know if I got any of that updraft, if you know what I'm saying. Anyway, but what they did is and by the way, one of the key players in AA at one point in time was Carl Jung. Yes, that's right, Carl Jung. So they basically moved the sun out of the recovery process, and they go straight to higher power, which I don't necessarily have a problem with. You know, if it saves somebody's life and they're able to function and be a better person, look, all power to them. And that even includes something like Scientology. I don't care. You know, if you're a better person and you're living a life that is morally correct and you're doing better things to people than not, you're treating yourself better, you're being truthful and honest, then it's working, because that's ultimately, I think, the greatest litmus. But we're all these walking wounds. We're just walking around, these open wounds. And then there are moments in crisis, and that's when the availability of medication, self-medication, and things like drugs, specifically the opioids, which are everywhere now. I mean, everywhere. Have you noticed the relationship to the occupation of the poppy fields in Afghanistan in relation to the proliferation and rise of opioids in our society? Is that a coincidence? I don't think it's a coincidence at all. And by the way, thank you for being patient today. A little bit of Mercury retrogradism setting in. I had a Mercury retrograde moment yesterday. I'll share with you after I go cycle through what I'm talking about. It's pretty funny and not at the same time. So you have these substances that are out there. We've got the opioids now. In the 80s and the 90s, it was cheap crack, cocaine. Went from cocaine to freebase. And having cocaine freebase is like going from the McDonald's single patty hamburger with maybe a slice of cheese. Okay, back in the old day, right? McDonald's, you had the double cheese and you had the cheese, one patty, fries, shakes. Maybe you had the fillet of fish. Maybe I think that's where they were at that time. It's like going from that single patty hamburger with cheese to a Big Mac. Right, the single patty with cheese, that's like cocaine. Oh man, it's really good. But then you get the Big Mac. And I was a Big Mac guy. I loved the Big Mac. I loved the little bun in the center. I loved the special sauce. I mean, the Big Mac was kind of a beautiful thing. But that was freebase. And I have no fast food equivalent to crack. I just don't. In fact, I have no relationship physically with crack or freebase. None. But I can tell you that I had friends that did, and boy, did they lose their shit. And I had one friend who went from that into the most affordable substitute when it hit the scene, and that was crystal meth, which was another extremely, and still to this day, is an extremely devastating drug. And these drugs, they're like the breath of Satan. Take me. Yes, I'm right here. And in those moments of vulnerability, when the world gets to be too much, when pressure is metastasizing and it's just piling on, those opportunities to check out are like, in that moment, a free pass from one's life. And if there's any kind of predisposition inside of a person, and we can see this astrologically, all we got to do is look at angles to Neptune. I'm sorry, it's the way it is. You got a Mars square Neptune in your chart, you're going to have an issue with some form of addiction. My son has a Mars-Neptune square. I can't get him off his cell phone. And you say, well, that's kind of a generational thing. Yeah, it is kind of generational. But I've seen him lie outright to take his cell phone to bed. Lie. I've seen him pull little diversionary stunts. So he'll knock something over, and then while I'm going to pick it up, he grabs his cell phone. So there's some real intent here. So any kind of squares to Neptune, Mars, Mercury, Moon, Sun, Venus, the squares can be dealt with. They're not death sentences, but they are, with Neptune, a form of affliction. Anyway, that's in the chart, and you can figure out where you've got Neptune squares. And the conjunctions of Neptune sometimes can be very interesting. It can be both visionary and can open the person up in such a way that is extremely transparent and painful. That's another story. Anyway, I saw so many lives just completely obliterated by these drugs. Absolutely, and this is what happened to Glenn Campbell, and this is how he got here. He had he was part of the snowstorm of the 1980s, and he was hanging out with Tanya Tucker. And, little Tanya Tucker, who was, I guess Tanya Tucker at that time was kind of the equivalent of Britney Spears in the country and western scene. She was a smoking hot little pistol. She'd been dating Don Johnson. She was making the rounds. I don't know if she's MK Ultra. She does come out of the Nashville scene. She's still touring to this day, and she's a born-again Christian. And she looks like she has become kind of a mature woman and got her life together. I mean, that's what it feels like to me. And she's out there singing and doing the casino circuits, and that's what Tanya has done. And I'm sure yesterday was a very sad day for her, even though her relationship with Glenn Campbell was incredibly tempestuous and violent. And the drugs, so the question is, right, is the penchant for violence and the propensity to lose control in the individual itself, and are the drugs just a passkey to that form of behavior? Question mark. I think to some degree the answer would be yes. It's kind of like you get people drinking, and alcohol is kind of a truth serum, and you can see what is on the inside of people when they get plastered. And if you hang out with people and you see them and they get happy and slurry, and they're basically, decent people and don't have a lot going on the inside, and they're just kind of surrendering to the moment, the happy slurry moment, and you have the happy drunk. And then you have the people who get more and more angry as they get more and more inebriated. And that brings out the deep and hidden anger inside of it. So that part we get and understand. These are the drugs can sometimes trigger things, but there's another effect with drugs, and especially the opioids and the stimulants, meth, coke, you name it. Now we've got all the designer drugs. Boy, that is a bizarre world. Like the bath salts, they just keep changing a molecule here and a molecule there, so they can stay one step ahead of the law and say, well, this isn't part of your Schedule A list of substances that are banned. They just keep changing a little molecule here and a little molecule, and then what happens is it turns people into flesh-eating zombies. That's what it does. But anyway, I think that the opioids and the stimulants actually do more than access somebody's deeper hidden triggers and wounds and pain. I actually believe that they are a transference for non-biological entities to come into our spirit. I truly believe this because these drugs blow holes in the aura. In the aura, when it's really nicely constructed and the person is living a pretty clean life and, maybe they're meditating, you've got a nice, etheric cocoon around you. But when a person engages in a long-term and even sometimes short-term relationship with substances, there are holes that get blown in the aura, and guess what? You become susceptible to interference by what we call entities, and that's a given. And so the next thing you know, you've got people doing really crazy shit that is not really a part of their history or their MO. And in the case of a drug like meth, they become possessed. And whatever it is that's feeding off of them is making sure that they do more meth, so those holes get blown open wider and wider and wider, and they have greater and greater access over to our loosh, our spirit, and we get drained. And the next thing you know, people are vestigial aspects of themselves, right? There's just not much there. So anyway, Glenn Campbell, you and Jimmy Webb wrote two of the greatest songs in maybe three. I don't know if Jimmy wrote Galveston, but I know he wrote Wichita Lineman, and I know he wrote Gentle on My Mind. And Wichita Lineman is, I think, one of the 10 best songs ever written. It says it all. Rest easy, Glenn Campbell. Another person who just passed away, we had Donnie Baylor, who played baseball here in Austin High, just down the road from where I live. He passed away a couple days ago. Everybody in Austin knew Don. He was an incredible athlete, and he had a long-standing relationship with Major League Baseball, and he was one of Austin's own. And Don died fairly young. I think he was 68. That's only like 15 years older than me. So when you start to see contemporaries, check out another baseball player, Darren Daulton, who played for the Philadelphia Phillies. He was part of the team that Pete Rose was on. And 53 years old. Darren Daulton's gone. Let me just take a deep breath here. All right. I'll tell you about my Mercury retrograde story, then we get into the meat of today's show. So we're in the shadow of Mercury retrograde. Let's be clear about that. That is happening. That is real. Okay, it's happening. It's on. And it first started off 2 days ago when I went out to my truck and I started it up and it wouldn't start. It's like, oh, dang, it didn't start. So what happened is I got a jump, drove around. That was on Monday. Tuesday, yesterday, I was at home working all day, which is what I do, the worldwide headquarters of robert-phoenix.com, Free Association Radio. And it was about 5 o'clock at night, and I was getting ready to go out for the first time in the day. And I go outside, and my truck is not where it's supposed to be. It's not where it's supposed to be. You ever have that feeling? You ever wake up or you come out of a store Yes, I know. You come out of a store and your vehicle is just not there. It is one of the creepiest feelings that you can experience. Because in that moment, you're like, so many scripts run through your head. First script, was this stolen? Did somebody steal my car? All right. The second script, this is what happened to me yesterday. I'm thinking, did I park here? Did I park here last night? Maybe I parked somewhere else. And this isn't my apartment complex that I live in. And I've got a covered stall where I park my car. I've been parking my car in that stall for the last 3 years. Every single day, every single night, that's where I park. Nobody's towed my car. Now, I have had my car towed here before, but that was when I first moved here and I was parking in a spot that I was not supposed to be parking in, and I didn't have the right sticker, and the parking parasites, they're like those sentinels in the Matrix. Remember in the Matrix, they had the sentinels, and they come after Neo in the Nebuchadnezzar, their ship. These towing services and their trucks are like the sentinels. Anyway, so I come out and I'm like, oh shit, my truck got towed. That's what happened. This is last night. So I walk up to the office and I blow a fuse. I just completely blow a fuse. And we have a new manager here, and boy, this woman, she stepped up. She called the towing service. And this woman worked her magic. And and what happened was, this is a total Mercury retrograde moment. Some guy called the towing service because somebody had parked in his spot. The towing service, which is located about 17 miles north of where I live. Okay. Hello? What was that? Wow. That was weird. Hold on. Hello? That was very strange. Wow. Did anybody else hear that? I might have to play that back. I'm having my carpets done today, so I have to be aware of that. Anyway, this guy calls the towing service 17 miles away. They finally get here at 7 a.m. They call the guy. He doesn't want to get up. I'm not going to meet you downstairs. I don't want to get out of bed. So the tow truck driver looks around and says, shit, I got to bring something back. And he finds my truck, and I don't have the official sticker, but I've been parking in my stall for 3 years, every single day and night. He says, oh, this guy doesn't have a sticker. This must be this. I'm going to take this in. I'm going to take this one in. And that's what happened. And I woke up, well, I didn't wake up, but I finally was able to resolve this. They released the $250 fee I'd have to pay to get my truck back. And I got it. So here we are, shadow of Mercury retrograde. Okay, so let's talk about the topic of today, because we have about 15 minutes left. The topic of today has to do with what's going on in Washington, and it is big. It is big. And this gets back to what I was talking about last week with Jupiter and Libra, and how for, quite a while, this Jupiter and Libra really hadn't kicked in. And if it had kicked in, we spent a long time with Jupiter retrograde for a lot of the spring and some of the summer, and then it went direct. And so now we have Jupiter and Libra expanding. Remember, we have the scales. We have the scales of justice. So now it's expanding, and I have never seen in the course of my life, 56 years on this planet, so many scandals that are these, there's subcutaneous scandals that are blistering on the surface. I mean, we can just go down let's check some boxes. Okay, we've got Wasserman-Schultz and the Awan brothers, which is a pretty significant scandal. Between 30 and 80 congressmen and women had their computers basically run by a bunch of clowns who didn't know how to do anything. They had absolutely zero experience in dealing with IT issues. And in fact, Imran Awan got one of his buddies hired who'd been fired from McDonald's, speaking of Big Macs. He'd been fired from McDonald's. He got him a $150,000 or $165,000 a year job. And he didn't know how to do anything. And it's because Imran Awan owed him money. What do these people do with their money? They made, a significant amount of money over their 10-year run. And Imran Awan employed an 18-year-old kid. An 18-year-old kid to basically run the IT systems. He was the only one that did any work. None of these people, none of the Awans ever showed up. They were called ghost contractors. They never showed up, and they were taken in $160,000 roughly a year. Some of them made a little bit less, and the whole family was on the payroll. And you had an 18-year-old kid who didn't want to do the job. I mean, think of all the really qualified IT people in this country that could have done that job. Think of the qualified IT people in this country that could have done the job, that would have loved to have done the job because it would have been a service to the country. How about that? Because there are people that still think along those lines. That they actually may take some pride over taking care of these computers for these Democratic representatives in Congress and get paid for it and do a good job. But no, instead, we get the clown team, and they're like the dark clown team. And I'm not talking, this is no reference to pigmentation. These guys were dark. They had a lot of other stuff going on. And their enabler, Debbie Wasserman-Schultz, passing them off as number one, competent, and number two, trustworthy. And none of them had any real security clearance. When you look at what they had to go through in order to get those jobs, it was nothing. They filled out a form. They signed some kind of a waiver, non-disclosure, which means nothing to criminals. It's just a piece of paper. To somebody else, say, I just signed a non-disclosure. I can't divulge any information. Yeah, those are rules for people that were brought up in a system that actually had some respect for rules of order inside of a system. Now, I've been a bit of an outlaw for most of my life to some degree, right? But I'm still here. I still follow your basic rules and etiquette, and because, hey, look, I want to stay in the game, and if you're going to live kind of, outside or on the fringe, you got to be as to some degree as honest as possible, right? I mean, you can't. There's no room for error in that way. Let's put it that way. But these people, including Debbie Wasserman-Schultz, which is why these guys were enabled, have absolutely no regard for anything. Nothing. They are running their own program, and they don't give a shit about you or I. All they care about is being able to hold on to their power, extend their reach, and find new avenues of assets that they can drain. That's it. That's it. Now, yesterday, I forget who the congressman was, but the Congress was hearing some fairly hardcore stuff yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong here, but they're starting to go after Hillary. They're starting to go after Loretta Lynch. They're starting to go after Donna Brazile. This stuff is starting to bubble up to the surface now. So we have the Debbie Wasserman-Schultz track with the Awans and the servers and everything else that they were doing, most likely selling information to the highest bidder. Now we have what went on the tarmac. If you want, by the way, if you want to throw some money at an organization, throw it at Judicial Watch. Because those Judicial Watch, basically, I'm telling you right now, is doing what the government is supposed to be doing. And we talk about the citizen participation. Judicial Watch is that. So if you have any extra Federal Reserve notes, digital currency, whatever, throw it their way, because they're now hammering on what happened on that tarmac. They got a Freedom of Information Act, a FOIA document that was almost completely redacted. And by the way, who's in charge of the redaction? It's Jeff Sessions, because he's the head of the Department of Justice, and those documents go through Sessions' office and cross his desk. Redact, 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 redact. Everything that went on as a transcript with that tarmac meeting in a third-party airplane. They met in a third-party airplane. Clinton had his airplane, Lynch had her airplane, and they met in a third-party airplane. Now, I don't know why they met in a third-party airplane. Now, apparently, somebody inside the FBI tipped somebody off that they were going to be there. That's how the pictures came out. That's how, when Loretta Lynch found out, that's when the guy asked the question, the reporter asked the question, she seemed stunned and shocked, because that was supposed to be a secret meeting on a tarmac in Arizona. Likely arranged by John McCain. I'm going to throw that out there. I think McCain might have had something to do with it. This is just supposition on my part. But it got leaked. And all of a sudden now it's part of the public record. So this is now starting to gain some traction. Jeff Sessions, this is, you're going to get two, I think, very varying and very distinct opinions about Jeff Sessions. On the one hand, there are people who say, Jeff Sessions, he's a good man, he's a good man, he's a good man. And on the other hand, you'll have people that say Jeff Sessions is a traitor. He's a total traitor. Why is he a traitor? Because he is not doing what he's supposed to be doing. The first thing he did is he recused himself from this whole Russia thing. He's like, I'm getting out of here. He did not tell Trump, and had Sessions come in and not been recused, he could have maybe jumped in on this whole thing and, dropped a brick on it. Okay, you got people emailing me. So this is, he recused himself. And there are very deep ties to Jeff Sessions and the Bushes. He has a long-standing relationship with the Bushes. He has a long-standing relationship with, guess who, the Clintons. This is why Jeff Sessions hasn't done shit. Yes, he's gone after immigration, and Alex Jones will be happy to tell you that immigration is down 70%, and that's all well and good. He's also got into, asset forfeiture and seizure. Basically, the war on marijuana again, which is, I'm not a big marijuana guy. I'm a medicinal marijuana, CBD, you name it. I think it's got its place. For me, it did not enhance the quality of my life. It robbed me of my ambition. Let's put it that way. And it turned me into something lethargic. That was many years ago. And I felt like I lost a lot of time. So I'm not, some people, again, I've had this discussion before, some people can function on it and they do incredibly well. And in fact, it's important to them that they're able to deal with social anxiety disorder. It has the exact opposite effect. I don't have social anxiety disorder. That's what cannabis brought me. Social anxiety disorder. It was like, I want to go. Eventually, I was like, I want to crawl into a fetal position. But there are people that do have that, and when they partake of cannabis, they actually are helped by it. And I've seen it time and time again. They're able to function. And I think people who are dealing with pain severe pain. There's a place for that. It's just not my thing. But anyway, it's like he's turning this back into the 1980s. And the country has moved on. Whether or not I have a seal of approval for, a carte blanche relationship with it, that's a whole other matter. I'm not the country. I'm just, I'm not. And so the country has moved on, and Jeff Sessions should probably figure that out. Anyway, so we've got Sessions, who's now kind of an impediment. But there's things going on here. We've got the Clinton side. We've got the Loretta Lynch side, the Donna Brazile side. James Comey's involved in this, and James Comey and Robert Mueller are buddies. They are tight. They're tight. So Mueller is on a mission to literally avenge the sacking of his best pal. Okay. Now, conversely, guess what? The past is starting to catch up with Robert Mueller and his time as the FBI director in just post 9/11. Hello, this guy knows where the bodies are buried. He knows who did 9/11. There's the whole anthrax thing that went down and sort of pushed us into the war in Iraq. I mean, so there are lots of chinks in Robert Mueller's well-oiled armor. Okay, they're there, and they're starting to come up. Meanwhile, on the other side, which is what's happening, you've got Mueller with not one but two impaneled groups of pretty much anti-Trump litigators and investigators going after Trump and getting into his personal affairs. This is beyond the Russia stuff. And subpoenas are going to go out. And people like Eric Trump, people like Ivanka, Jared Kushner, and people inside of Trump's organization, that old guy, maybe Omarosa, who knows? They're going to have to sit down with a grand jury, and they get grilled, and they're getting grilled by sharks. And they'll find things because everybody has crap on each other. They'll find things. And what they find will no doubt be served up in the form of leakage. The findings won't be final. They won't come to some kind of moment in time. This is my sense, where Mueller will render his report and render his decision and may actually start to arrest people. This could actually happen. This could actually happen. But I believe that they'll be leaking some of this testimony, because what the leaking does is it's a form of predictive programming, so that it's like, we're telling you what we're going to do. We're telling you what we're going to do. We're telling you what we're going to do. And by God, we're doing it. This is what is accomplished by leaking. It's letting us know. It's telling us, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? So I got a comment. I'm going to read this. This is from, I can use her name. She wouldn't mind. This is Kathleen Aponte. She commented on my video from Sunday night, which now has a whopping 616 views, 42 thumbs up, and 2 thumbs down. That's not bad. So Plutonian, this is the comment from the video, says, I have a horrible feeling that the eclipse might see our president's assassination. They use eclipses for sacrifices, and this is a huge eclipse. I pray that I am wrong, but they have come out and admitted they are going to neutralize Trump. The eclipse could be the start of an uncivil war. And Kathleen says, I don't think there will be an assassination, as that opens the door to martyrdom for Trump. His base is huge, vested, and put their eggs in his basket. They want him diminished, humiliated, and doing the perp walk in CNN. Kathleen is absolutely right. She's right about that. And I talked about this on the Sunday night show, which is the occult sacrifice of Donald Trump. This is what this eclipse is about. They're going to want him to be flayed in front of everybody, humiliated, so that process of shame is a brand on people's spirit who believed in this idea that we could actually regain parts of our sovereignty, parts of our mind, parts of our ability to speak what's in our heart, what's in our minds, even if those thoughts might be black and might get shouted down. At least we have theoretically the opportunity to say those things. And if that's the case, you either have to defend that position or you have to reassess your position and say, you know what, I might have been wrong, which most people have a very difficult time doing, by the way. And, certainly we've all had our dance with that. But this is what I believe is part, and I talked about this on Sunday night. This is part of the process. They want Trump to be a flayed god, and they want to get to the 40% or the 45% that voted for him. They want to stick a dagger in the heart of every single one of those people. And Kathleen is absolutely right. Now, what is going to happen? Is he going to fight back? Is it going to be more than just a Twitter storm? This is going to be very interesting. We're going to see hand-to-hand combat here, unless, of course, he's completely complicit, gets tossed out of office, and Mike Pence prances in there and does his robo-president impersonation for the next 2 years. We're in the octagon right now. And so we have Jupiter and Libra blowing everything up on both sides. And there's more. There's the Seth-Rich scandal. And Seymour Hersh, the celebrated reporter who basically helped end the Vietnam War, he comes out and says Seth-Rich is the source of WikiLeaks. Now, I don't necessarily trust Hersh completely. I don't trust anybody completely unless I get to hang out with them and vet them for a while. And then if I'm into somebody, I'll trust them 100%. Cy Hersh makes the assertion that, hey, look, Seth-Rich's death has nothing to do with leaking. Okay, so he has this caveat. So he says, yes, he leaked to WikiLeaks, but his death is just some kind of random thing. And you can't point the death to whomever, right? Hillary, Podesta, whoever would have some vested interest in shutting him up. One of the alphabet. So he's basically saying, it was just a random kind of thing where he gets killed and nothing gets taken from him. But, he's respected enough, has enough gravitas, and has a strong enough track record when he says that he's the guy that dumped the leaks, then you got to take that into consideration. So you've got the Seth-Rich scandal kind of swirling around, and the Iwans, and Debbie Wasserman, and Hillary Clinton, and Donna Brazile, and Barack Obama. And then you have the coup in the White House, and the McMasters, and the Kellys. And then you have Trump and his grand jury panel with Mueller, and what's going on with his resources with Russia, and deals he made with Russia back in the 90s and early 2000s. This is crazy shit. And this is Jupiter and Libra expanding whatever's going on both sides. And it's really interesting to watch. And I do my best to try to stick my toe into the future. That's what I do. And if this is not diffused, and they're going to stay on Trump until he's done. They have tons and tons of resources. They'll just keep throwing the resources at defaming him, making him appear to be impotent and not being able to get things done. And so this will go on for as long as they need to or want to, especially leading up to the midterms. They want a wounded version of Trump. And if they decide that they're going to displace him, this could happen very quickly. But right now we're in open hand-to-hand combat. This is not snipers from the grassy knoll. These are people that are kind of in the trenches right now, and the knives are out, and this is going to be very interesting over the next couple of weeks, especially as we get into Mercury retrograde even deeper, we're going to see some stuff where things are going to be revealed. It's going to be a fascinating time. Hold on to your seatbelts. This is going to get good. And hopefully the winner out of this will be not just the American people, but the people of the world. I mean, I don't want to just completely stay sort of American-centric here. We're the police force of the world, and we're throwing down sanctions. And sanctions are an act of war. It sounds so clerical. Oh, sanctions. Yes, they're going to get sanctions. Slap their hands. No, sanctions are pretty significant. Sanctions are the thing that is the precursor to some form of regime change. And it is, you can just see this again and again and again and again. That's how it happens. What a great time to be alive. Glenn Campbell, God bless you. I hope you're just humming and strumming up there, and you've managed to elude the hoary grasp of the archons while you're at it. Well, I think that's about it. I think we've covered a lot of ground today, don't you think? It is the metastasizing of truth that has been hidden beneath the surface, and now it's become a subcutaneous operation that is bubbling up to the surface like a boil that needs to be lanced. All right, this is Robert Phoenix. You know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open to what's possible. And let's get out of here with a little My German Friend. I'll see you guys 24 hours from today.